Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fordio with another South Coast Artist Index podcast, and we're going to get rolling because it's hot in the studio today. This is a period of time where this heat wave, although I think we escaped it pretty well, even the dire predictions at triple digits and so on and so forth. But now that I got that out of my mind, I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves and spell their names.
Hi, this is Elyse. I go by Elyse Laurelle for my artwork business. It's spelled E-L-Y-S-E, that's the first name, and the middle name is spelled L-A-U-R-E-L-L-E, so a lot of L's and E's. And I am a local artist based out of the Co-Creative Center in downtown New Bedford. I live in Mattapoisett with my son. I currently am working as the program director for the Art Start Kids programming at the Marion Arts Center, and I teach local paint classes in the South Coast community.
Now, you dropped your last or your family name.
Yes.
Probably because nobody really pronounces it correctly, right?
Correct, yes. And not only that, but no one actually pronounces my first name correct either. So, because it's spelled E-L-Y-S-E instead of E-L-I-S-E. Uh-huh. And so everyone always thinks it's Elsie. And I remember one of my college professors for one of my literature courses saying, Elsie, is Elsie here on the first day? And I said, it's Elyse, I'm here. And he's like, it's Elyse, really? Unusual spelling. And I just kind of went, yep. And that's just been my life, basically.
Yeah. Plus, Demarest doesn't... It's not spelled the way it sounds.
No. And then my last name also, so I've given you Elyse Laurelle, first, middle, last name is Demarest, so D-E-M-A-R-E-S-T.
Right.
And so it sounds like a lot of French.
Yeah, it is. Because it is Demarest. Yeah, and I've had people with my name. It's funny because it all depends on what part of the country you're dealing with. Some sort of representative, whatever, and they butcher 40 but now I don't know why, but they're a lot more cognizant of the name, and then they're very careful to ask, oh, am I pronouncing 48 right? I was like, yes, it's 48 south of the Mason-Dixon line, but in these parts it's 40er, and up in Canada it's 40. So damn foreign names.
Yeah, I was saying 40er earlier, and then
Yeah, it's funny. So, did you grow up in this area?
I did not. I grew up in Metro Detroit. And,
get out of here.
Yeah, Metro Detroit, and then the area we were living when I was in middle school kind of got really bad. So then my parents moved to the suburbs about 15 minutes outside of Ann Arbor. So, and I have some friends in Detroit and a good friend in Grand Rapids I still try to visit.
Well, let me tell you, Detroit is phenomenal. I don't know what it was like before. I don't want to say I don't care, but I do remember when I told people I was getting married to this wonderful woman from Detroit, and they're like, what do you want to go there for? And, the DIA, as many times as we've been there, we have not spent enough time.
You can spend so much time there. I've spent a lot of summers there. So I was always interested in art. I did art camps in Detroit, and my mom and my grandfather, her stepfather, took me there a lot. So that was really, the Detroit Institute of Arts is beautiful. And I grew up in Detroit during the Red Wings heyday, so that was pretty cool for me too. So
as my wife would say, if it wasn't for the Red Wings, she wouldn't be a sports fan at all.
Exactly. And now I've I've been living in New England since 2014, and I'm in a conundrum because I consider Massachusetts my home now and the South Coast down here, but now I don't know who to root for.
Do you know there are 600 Detroiters
really
living in this area?
I did not
I don't know
that.
who figured that out, but
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's insane.
Yeah, and there is several different types of connections between the two.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me, though, because any time when I tell people where I initially grew up from, they always like, oh, I see why you probably feel a connection to New Bedford because of Detroit. And I'm like, yes, yeah. Okay. It's a weird thing, but it's happened to me several times. People have said that to me.
Yeah, we have an incredible Diego Rivera here.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
But there is like a huge art entrepreneur scene in Detroit, so I think that might be where that comes from. And then again, like, I don't know who to root for during hockey season, either the Bruins or the Red Wings now. Like, it's a real conundrum.
Yeah, well, being my father's side they're all Quebecois, they're from the Gaspé, and hockey is, that's something I didn't really, being nearsighted as a kid pretty much puts a damper on sports.
Yeah, sure.
But my cousin Roland, he's my second cousin, worked for Canadian Tire, and they would have half ice games during lunchtime.
Really? Yeah, I believe it.
And then there was the shell-up races during the Bonhomme d'Hiver, the winter festival crossing the St. Lawrence River. That's ice flows in these shell-ups, these shallow boats.
Yeah.
And I said, Roland, why do you do that? And he was like, because we are Canadiens. So anyway, so the art bug bit you in Detroit, or?
Yeah, my grandfather was a classical violinist for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and he was also a professional painter. So he worked on some buildings in Detroit.
What was his name?
Dale Nelmark. Dale Nelmark.
Okay, so Dale, Dale.
Yep.
And last name?
Nelmark.
Nelmark. Okay.
Yeah. So he played for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra as a violinist, and then he did artwork, a lot of interior building stuff, and then he did paintings at home. And he also did photography, so he was,
two friends in Detroit, hope I can remember the name. One's Tom Burke. He is a professional dumpster diver.
Oh, wow.
And he has found some stuff that would break your heart. If it wasn't, because he feels like if it wasn't for me diving, I mean, he's got this, and I'm wondering if any of your grandfather's work is in one of the dives he did a couple of years ago. I mean, it was a stash of photography going back years.
Yeah.
And then my other friend Henry Harper, who co-founded the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club, which they didn't even know they were doing that. They were just having breakfast. But he has a shop on Grand Avenue. He is an antiquarian, and he runs an art gallery as well. And he has dismantled some of the Ford mansions, relocated the family, and he is incredibly well versed in arts and antiques.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll ask him about that.
Yeah.
So the art camps you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're great.
Really?
Yeah, I love them. They're great. So I'm the program director, so I'm just running it and making sure everything's going good. And we have a art teacher, music teacher, and theater teacher, and they're great. They're great. And the kids come, and I arrange them into age groups. So we have younger kids in red group. We have kind of 6 to 7 year olds in yellow group, and then we have 8 to 9 year olds in green group. And they come all week. And we have organized themes. So we had Under the Sea theme, and we did magic, mythical creatures this week. So the kids are making kind of work around the themes. They do music around the themes. They do theater stuff around the themes. So it's really cool. It's really fun. We get people from all over. I mean, not just Marion, residents and people coming, but people from all over New Bedford, Mattapoisett, Fairhaven, and stuff. It's really cool. I mean,
I was just having this flashback to summer camp, And it was always, for some reason, they considered you the geeky if you wanted to hang out more at the arts and crafts club.
Yeah.
And this is like a dream come true, because now you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't want to do archery. I don't want to do this. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm just happy doing art. So.
Happy doing art. Yeah. The kids love it. And then like the theater is fun. The music is so much fun. And I remember like I went to like this art camp in Metro Detroit that was like a hole in the wall, basically. It was like an art store, and then there was a room in the back, and like we did like serious art. And that was so between my grandfather and just that experience, I remember like working with like oil paint, pastels, all kinds of awesome. And like I had this body of work I made when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool to be part of like this really great art camp in Marion.
I mean, you are creating memories and developing muscle memory for some of these kids. Many people from around here who grew up around here remember back in the day where, and these are people who didn't follow a path, career path in the arts, but their appreciation of art remains, and yet, and also, it's still a very emotional and a very fond memory for them. The Swain School of Design's Saturday morning art classes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that seems, I'm sort of analytical. Well, I am analytical, but I would really love to be able to plot out what the levels of art appreciation were in the 50s, 60s, and then I know the precipitous plunge in the 70s because I worked for the superintendent of arts for the Bedford Public Schools, and then almost wiped out. The first things to go. I mean, orchestra would get hit. And this is my assessment. Yeah. Orchestra would get hit first before the marching band, because the marching band was associated with football.
Right.
If it wasn't for football, they'd probably get the axe as well.
Oh yeah.
And the lack of appreciation for the arts is a little bizarre. Yet, and we've had incredible award-winning marching bands between New Bedford and Dartmouth. We've had incredible theater in the area, and artists are much more visible now, I think, or it's because of that weird phenomenon. I used to do this exercise with my marketing students and say, okay, I want you to be conscious of red-headed people for until the next class.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it like, that's the assignment? Yeah. Okay. And then I could see their eyes like bulging out of their heads when they came in for the following class.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. You can't believe what? There are so many redheaded people. It's because you're conscious of it.
Yeah, because they were paying attention.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So now, some of the experiences that you've had with the kids, the students, do they fall into specific categories? Or, I mean, are there some that you're going, oh my God, I'd love to see this kid in another 5 years, 10 years?
Oh yeah, they're just kids purely there for the enjoyment of it, and like they love doing it, and whether it's just a hobby for them or just a way for them to kind of explore their creative side a little bit. It's not necessarily a passion. Mm-hmm. It's great. And then you have these kids where this one kid, Theo, did like this drawing of a fox, and I swear like it looked like it was drawn by an adult.
Really?
I was just kind of like sitting there like blown away, and I just thought like, oh, you have that's an artist right there. Like don't stop. And it's really amazing to see it. And I think there's a sense of like wanting to encourage that too, kids that you see that spark. And not to say that some of the other kids or right now, they're just enjoying the experience of it, can't get there, but like you just see
there's levels of development, and there's also timing.
Exactly.
Some just rise up like a bubble, like really fast, right?
Exactly. So like sometimes it just springs up, and it's not like too with every kid, every activity strikes them, but this kid drew like a picture of a fox, and it was just like.
How old?
He's 8. No, 7. I'm gonna say 7.
Wow.
But it was just amazing. I just like could not believe how beautiful it was, and it reminded like of younger like me and some of the kids I went to art class with, where we like really cared, and he really cared about it too. And it was beautiful. And I want to encourage that, because I just remember when I was a kid, I said like I wanted to be an artist, and I remember the first thing out of my dad's mouth was artists don't make money, and like it just kind of discouraged that for me. So it was something I kept away. Basically, I did in secret, in private, or at school. Like I did art club, and when I was in college, I always painted like when I was stressed out, and it wasn't something I really pursued. And when you see a kid who has this natural talent and genuinely loves it and wants to make more and more and more, I want to encourage that.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to get back to you as an artist in particular, but I'm sticking now with you as a teacher, because, and I don't know about you, but one of the reasons why I liked teaching art was because I thought I learned so much more.
Yes.
As an artist.
Yes, like I think there's so much self-exploration. There's also a lot of research that goes into art, a lot of critical thinking.
Right.
So there's a lot of skills you develop and build that are important in any other area of life. But like through art, there's so much self-exploration, so much critical thinking, so much problem solving. Art can be like a puzzle, and I see the kids doing it, when they're trying to figure out how they want to make this piece that they're working on in their art class. Like they're working through it's a problem in a way, and I feel that way myself too. So it's really cool to see kids channeling that part of their brain and working through that in their artwork.
Yeah, I mean, they're finding, repetitive patterns. So why is it that art isn't considered a necessity in education? It seems like it got sequestered to it's like study hall with crayons.
Yeah. I would love an answer to that question. It's something too that what a good movie is, Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams has this spiel about, like we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need engineers, we need, baristas, we need everything. But we also need like makers, creators, entrepreneurs, artists that, because this is the stuff we live for. I think he talks about poets, painters, we need that. It's kind of what makes us feel as people. And also it can be a form of exploration. It can be a form of protest. It can be a way to get the world to pay attention to something, or for people to feel seen or understood. It brings connection, can, cross barriers, build bridges. Art can do a lot of things. So it is kind of sad when you see there's still like struggle for it to be seen as this legitimate,
it's practical.
Yeah, as something practical that we actually do need in the world.
I mean, other than traveling from Michigan to Massachusetts, have you done any traveling where, and once you're an artist, I mean, your antennae are always out there.
Yeah.
You start picking up on stuff that most people it just goes right over their head or under their nose. Have you noticed attitudes about art? Are different in different communities and different places that you visited, and what places were those?
Oh yeah. So I did a study abroad program in London, and I mean art is huge there. I mean there's the Tate, and like there's just like
that's on my list.
Yeah, and there's just art schools. Art is seen as a legitimate avenue in life. Like I went to Kingston University for my program, and art was a legitimate. I remember kind of just looking at the university in general. I was doing very specific work for an English degree, but like I remember just browsing the university, and there was so much to be done in art, and there was just so much art over there. Art museums, art galleries, art centers for children, art places, art everywhere. And then I've been to France. Art is obviously huge there. I've been to Italy. I see people selling artwork everywhere. And Croatia, I went to Croatia. Art was big there too, and it was different kinds of art, and that was pretty cool to see. And Spain, art is big.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, there's the whole Picasso museum there.
Oh, Reina Sofia. In Madrid. Yeah. I was like steps away, but I had to catch a train to get back to Lisbon, and it's like so much.
I mean, so much. And Ireland too. Ireland actually has, like, aside from a huge literary scene, there is a huge music and artistic scene, and that's why I think Ireland is probably one of my favorites. Aside from London, is there's just a huge artsy scene in general.
It's art lived, because poetry is part of the pub. The
pub's experience.
Yeah.
So is music. I listened to some of the best live music I ever had heard walking into a random pub in Galway.
I don't know if it's still in existence, but he used to plug it as a real Irish pub founded by a real Irish guy from Ireland. Liam O'Neill's, I think, is in Falmouth, across from the park.
Yeah. It sounds very familiar.
And if you go in there, you got to go in there on Friday, if they still do it, for the fish and chips. And then the stomping begins. It's phenomenal. But, there's a art scene that's lived.
Yes. It's lived. It's
whereas, in England, of course, it's more
displayed
and such.
Yes.
Do you find that there's a greater cultural maturity in Europe than there is here?
I think so. Yes, I think so. Although I would say part of the reason I love this area is I think there's a huge cultural maturity here in New Bedford, like and the South Coast in general. So I mean, there's just so many outlets. But I do think in Europe there is art is considered to be very practical, and there are a lot of people that can make a life in an artistic avenue.
Right.
Again, like just in Ireland in general, I mean, I think musicians are revered, writers are revered.
They had that whole block with the YBAs, the Young British Artists.
Yes,
and there is so much support for the arts there. I know in Portugal, when I first moved there, he was like, "So what do you do?" Casual conversation. I'm an artist. Really? Yeah. Have I seen your work? Do you have anything you can show me?
Yeah.
Are you in a gallery currently?
Yeah.
And then of course, here it's like, oh yeah, you don't make any money doing that?
Yeah.
But you just triggered something just a bit ago. I think when you said there was an artistic maturity here, I think it's taken hold.
Yes, there is.
Because there's so many people who are obviously surviving. Thriving would be better.
Thriving would be better.
All
yes.
right. So in England, is that when you were inoculated by Turner? Because now we're segueing. It's a clumsy segue, but it's a segue to your artwork.
I've always loved Turner. And then I do like Winslow Homer too, which is for this area. But Turner definitely. Yeah. And I don't know. There's something about. Like, I remember the first time I went to Ireland, all I could think about is I wanted to paint that sea. It was really weird. I just wanted to paint. That was
talk
all
about
I could think.
an expressive landscape, right?
Yeah, and then, and between England and Ireland, I saw... I think being in the Tate itself was just kind of like a revelation of because they just had so much art, and it was amazing. So yeah.
The Tate now has also grabbed onto modernism really.
Yes, I think. Well, and that was particularly why I loved the Tate. Like all of my grad school stuff for literature was all about modernism in general. So it was all James Joyce and Virginia Woolf and all of those people.
And have you ever watched, it's on YouTube, the Fake or Fortune television series, BBC television series?
I have not, no.
It's with Fiona Bruce, who you may know from the British Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah.
And Philip Mould, that's his name. And they're like art detectives, and people will, correspond with them and say, hey, I found something in the barn, or this has been hanging up in Grammy's closet, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they go to find out if this is a genuine whatever.
Yeah.
And there was one of the episodes they had on Turner, which was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
check it out now.
He was really bound and determined. There was this one piece. He said, this, with every fiber of my being, this is a Turner.
Yeah.
But there was something totally off. And then they found out unscrupulous dealers, because Turner painted huge.
Right.
And the dealers are like, I can't get rid of this big booger, but if I broke it up into 5 or 6 pieces, or whatever the number is, I could sell them off that way.
Yeah.
And that's what he had, was a cut off piece.
Wow. What a cool, oh my God.
Yeah, so there's so many twists and turns, and talk about learning art history in at a street level.
Yeah, that's like literally from a street level. That's amazing.
Did you get to see the Turner exhibit at the MFA in Boston?
No, I didn't.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that was.
I can only imagine. Boston is still like this area I really need to explore. And so,
and unfortunately,
yeah.
gotta wait another year for the train to come through.
I know, like that's why I keep like waiting. I can't because I hate that drive.
I've been waiting since I could learn to walk. No sooner they get rid of it, they're like, "Oh, damn, what do we do?" Now it's coming back. And then, of course, living in, or even traveling in Europe, the train is so normal.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I got so comfortable with public transit studying abroad that it was just, it was perfectly normal. And in Ireland, like backpacking and hiking is perfectly, like no one looked at me weird.
Yeah.
It was just, of course. Why wouldn't you go backpacking?
I always, wondered about the Highlands, the Scottish Highlands, and I'm not a big drinker, but I do appreciate good scotches. To sip and ponder kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it is absolutely amazing. Well, I used to do a wine show way back in the old days with a friend of mine. It was called The Wine Guys, and we always used to say that we knew more than the average guy and a hell of a lot less than the experts.
Yeah.
And we tried to dumb down wine for the average Joe.
Sure.
And then we ran across somebody who introduced us to Scotch, that the Americans have this, like, why are you putting ice cubes in there? You're anesthetizing the Scotch. Why would you do that, right? And but there's this whole culture, this whole wonderful different way of looking at things. I mean, just can you imagine backpacking and bringing, doing plein air out there?
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's kind of my next goal whenever I go to Europe again, is just to do that. And particularly in Ireland, I would like to go to Scotland because I'm really Scottish, Irish, and French. And I also would like to go to Norway and do that.
Well, there's a huge crossover that a lot of people don't understand. There are a lot of so-called quote-unquote Irish names that are not Irish. They're French. And one of the most famous stories is I was talking about wine. The most famous wine, was Haut-Brion, right?
Okay, yeah.
Hautbrione, I think. And it was founded in 1749, and there was the land problems in Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, one of the guys who had the wherewithal to escape Ireland came to France.
Okay.
And his name was O'Brien.
That's awesome.
So one of the most famous wine houses in France is run by an Irish guy.
That's amazing.
Just so many of those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
And then, the court of James and, crossing over into France. A friend and neighbor, she's from Spain, her sisters came over for a visit while, oddly, they were in Spain. And it's, keep an eye on my sisters, and they got the key to the house and so on and so forth. And they were like, Ron, we were downtown and we tried to get into a church and it was locked. And they only open it up for services.
Right.
And it's like, that must be an American thing. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, no, in Europe, churches are open all the time.
Yes, no, that's really true.
I said, we can't do that here.
Yeah, no, it can't. But no, it's true. It's really, really true. I went, there was a brief time where I almost thought about becoming a religion professor instead of an English professor. And part of my favorite thing in Europe was going into churches and places of worship and kind of appreciating it. I'm not quite sure why for a brief moment that happened, but.
Well, no, I can understand. I went to parochial school for 8 years.
Okay.
So it's an indoctrination, basically. And there is something about the pomp and circumstance. There is something about rites and rituals that are kind of alluring. Until you find out the ugliness.
The ugliness. Well, and that was kind of what happened is I had a professor of mine that wanted me to do a introduction we had a speaker. She was this woman who wrote a book about women's rights in Islam. And so my professor had me come, and then she had me do come to a dinner, and we had like all these professors in the religion department. We had a Christianity professor, we had the Islamic professor, we had the Buddhist professor, we had
oh my God, it's like a John Prine song.
Oh my God, we had my professor who invited me. She did like death and dying courses and women in religion courses, and so she kind of had the psychoanalysts of religion, and it was just sitting there. I just kind of was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I thought, okay, maybe I should be a religion professor instead of an English professor. And then I started to see, like, not only is it just really tough to be a religion professor, but also, like, my head of religion professor literally come up to me and say, don't become a religion professor.
I flashed on the John Prine song. Pretty good, not bad. You can't complain. Actually, everything's about the same. I think that's the title. And it's like, I saw Allah and Buddha sitting at the Savior's feast, and up in the sky an Arabian rabbi fed Quaker oats to a priest. Pretty good, not bad. You can't complain because all them gods is just about the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then again, too, that's the religiosity, especially Portugal was such a Catholic country.
Oh yeah.
And Spain as well. It's like, whatever.
Oh yeah.
But there's this thing, it's hard to explain. There's still this connection that they have as long as you don't tell them what to do. Because, I mean, you're going in, and that's when one of the Spanish ladies, as we call them, when they were visiting, said, we've got churches that are older than your country.
No, it's so true. No. Well, and I think part of the reason I ended up going into literature, and then I got like really interested in Irish literature, is I had this professor who had a parent born in Ireland and a parent born in England during the Trouble, during really hard times. And a lot of political issues and then religious issues on top of that. So he explained how that upbringing really informed him, and he gravitated towards James Joyce and all this Irish literature because there was just, between Catholics and Protestants, that was a huge defining part of his childhood.
And look at the Ruination, what it did to people, and then now it's the same thing with the Middle East.
Yeah.
And that was another created trouble.
Yes.
And people don't, that's another thing too, not to be American bashing, but having political discourse, polemics, as they refer to it there, you can have and you can have discussions that are arguments, but they're not, I'm going to flatten all your tires and burn your house, kind of things, and you're allowed to give your point of view, but wow, because they've suffered so much.
Yes, no,
they've suffered so much from religion.
Yes,
There's no other way around it. So you're studying English literature.
Yeah, that was what I was
saying. And in the back of your head is still
art. Art never went away.
Okay.
Art never went away.
When did you decide to use the really bad analogy, pull the trigger? That's another bad segue, right?
Yeah. Well, so I moved out here for a PhD program, and I had a teaching position at URI, and then I worked as a supplemental professor at the Naval Academy Prep School in Newport. And then COVID happened, and I got let go, and also my marriage fell apart. And at that point, I just couldn't figure out where I wanted to go in academia. Enrollment was so enrollment was so low that the prospect of getting a tenure track job, the unlikelihood of that happening was so high at that time. And it's still bad now. And I just didn't feel like I was helping anyone at the time, didn't know where to go with it. And so I had taken some classes at RISD in their continuing education program for painting. And I started working for social services as a floating art teacher. So I worked with family services, and they had a center for adults with disabilities, and I just started teaching art classes. And then I started doing paint nights. And at the time, it was just this job I got.
It's something to do.
Yeah, something to do. It
beats working at Walmart or
exactly.
Or waitressing.
Yes, exactly. I didn't want to waitress. I didn't want to adjunct teach and make very little money either doing the work.
Oh my God, yes, CCRI was
Like
CCRI was a third of what I was making at UMass.
Yes, yeah. Like adjunct teaching is horrible. I had to when I was in my master's program, I worked as an adjunct at a community college in Michigan, and I had to work at a tribal college too on a reservation.
Really? Which one?
Saginaw Chippewa, the Saginaw Chippewa Tribal College. So it's with the Anishinaabe tribe, and it was on the res, and I was working those two jobs and still like barely able to pay for.
Well, was the other one Henry Ford? Because that's where my wife taught it.
No, this one was mid-Michigan Community College. So it was like in the middle of nowhere, basically.
Going back to the Indian reservation, because that's another one of those explorations. I had started doing that. I started doing socially conscious art or socio-political art back when I was a graduate student at the University of Miami. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then as I wanted to advance more, my thesis advisor said, you came in on your abstract work and you're leaving on your abstract work.
Wow.
So, and then just during the pandemic is when I went back to it to investigate a horrible incident, heartbreaking incident in my wife's family during slavery, and I got like hooked on it, and all of a sudden there was something like, remember, this is what used to fire you up. So I remember when I was in graduate school, I decided I was going to go to the Miccosukee Indian Reservation because I thought, wow, that's got to be really cool.
Yeah.
I was never more sickened in my life by that experience. So much so that, the only way I could illustrate it is if I was to put little cards on my door and all my neighbors and say, come in and see the white man's house, 25 cents a person. All of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I can't wash this off.
No, it's true. Like there's like a generational trauma that you feel on the res. It's really weird. And you can feel that pain. And that I saw a museum in Michigan had released finally the remains of these of members of the tribe. Like they had kept the bones in a museum in a basement, and they finally released them back to the tribe so the tribe could bury them. And they had a whole ceremony, and they did this whole walk, and finally got to bury them. And I got to be around for that, and it was really heartbreaking just to see. And then they're the trauma of that history has carried on. There were so many students I worked with that had domestic abuse, alcoholism, just people trying to get their lives on track and going through these struggles, and you could see that history and that trauma just had carried over and not left. And it just it was I met so many amazing people.
Oh yeah,
and
these are like survivors. These are
survivors. These
are like post-apocalyptic people.
Yeah,
there's no other way to describe it.
Yeah.
And of course, all right. So you had the successful ones like Johnny Tiger's airboats.
Yeah.
And they made a living, grifting the white people.
Right.
But it's just something. It just doesn't feel good for me.
It doesn't feel good. I didn't even I honestly just didn't feel great working there. Just this white woman, trying to teach literature. Remember when they asked me to teach a Native American lit course, and I was just I just didn't feel good about it.
Yeah, what would I?
Yeah, what do I say?
Yeah, right.
I didn't. It just didn't sit well with me. And again, everyone was happy I was there, glad I was there, but I felt.
Yeah.
And one of the members of the tribe who was a professor there, he always was really kind. We had great conversations, and I think he liked me working there, but I didn't feel good. I didn't sit well.
Yeah, the only thing that you could have done would be to find parallels in other literature, other cultural literature that were parallel to. I mean, it's a diaspora. It's genocide. It's just not to sound crass, but they're not the only ones.
No, exactly. No, it's in.
And now the time that we're living in now. I mean, Vietnam. That era. The youth movement, the women's movement, all the different movements. The Black Panthers, all this stuff going on. We thought those were crazy, dangerous times. But now it's man, that was a cakewalk compared to what's going on now. Even though people, what are you talking about? You don't see people out there. No. It's more of a head space thing.
Yeah, no, it's almost exasperating when I look at the news, and honestly, just I think sometimes that's why even more art, like at this time in my life, appeals to me. Like I just feel like we need it. Like we need these hopeful things.
So when you're doing these, and it's like one of those double-edged swords too, as an artist. People look at your work and like, oh, it's Turner, and you're like, yeah, no. Because don't forget too, our art history education is very, very narrow.
Yes.
Because there's so much of it, and it's got to be squeezed into a box. There are other artists, and the artwork that we see that's representative of these major players isn't reflective of their entire careers. Right. I saw some John Constables. I might have been on the Fake of Fortune television series of Constable's work that I remembered a quote from my art history professor, Evan Firestone, saying that Turner said, had Constable lived, because he died before, I would have starved. What a compliment.
Seriously,
sort of backhanded in this morose thing, but oh my God.
That is the ultimate
compliment. Is it the virtuosity? Is it the, you talked about the British Isles and stuff, and I think Turner's hand, I know this sounds crazy and far-reaching, but my mother was a father singer, and that the father tradition, it's really, they're connected because the Portuguese are in the north, Celts.
Yeah.
Down in the middle where my family came from, Celtiberians, and then down to the south, the Phoenicians.
Yeah.
So the skin, eyes, and hair changes as it's almost like a thermometer as you go down the coast, right?
Yeah.
But there is this lament of father. It's unrequited anything or everything.
Right.
When you're painting your scenes, are you just trying to... Well, what are you doing? I'm not going to put you in a spot or say something that might make me sound really stupid.
Yeah. No, that's a great. Honestly, like, I don't even know how to explain how it just started happening. Like, I mean, I moved here, last spring officially. Like, I had known people down here and had some friends down here already, and I was working in the area because it was in 2022. I had seen like the area down here was hiring in public school, and it was an area I was possibly exploring to go into for education. So, but it was just last summer, like I was spending so much time by the water with my son, and like again, Turner, Homer, all of those people are always kind of in my brain. They're images I love to look at, and then just the ocean itself, and
they were all connected.
Yeah, they're all connected, right. and then I dream a lot about water. I don't know how to explain it. I dream a lot about water, and
it might be a genetic memory.
Yeah, it's something. There's something. It's weird, and I was going through a tough time because my son's father was giving me some grief, and so I just kind of like was thinking about how happy my son and I were here, and I was thinking about the boats. I was thinking about Turner and Homer, but I also can't paint like that. I don't. I need to paint more freely, and so I just kind of painted the same way I used to paint, just very abstract acrylic work, because that kind of was how I just...
Which also threw people off.
Yeah.
Because, and a little side note, I met Elyse at a New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club meeting, and it was like bees to honey. And you must have been so pumped that you couldn't sleep when you got home, right? Because it was amazing. It was like, where you been? Oh my God!
I was in
people
shock.
were like all over you, right?
No, I was in shock.
Yeah.
And so and I started painting like these acrylic backgrounds, and then I just kind of started thinking about some of the boats I see. and then I just kind of started painting these abstract boats coming out of the storm, because in some ways that's kind of what I feel like I'm always doing. I have this metaphor in my head for when I'm going through all these hard times. I just think of myself as like going through the waves basically, and there's light, like you can see where the storm's breaking in the distance, but I'm trying to get to that point. And
safe harbor,
yeah. And there's like these points of like where it seems like I'm almost safe, and then there's a storm again. So it became this body of work basically. But I look insane when I'm at the co-creative in my studio space painting, because I have my headphones on. Music is a huge part of it. And it's just like layer after layer after layer until I get it look, because my friend Dina, the director of the co-creative, Dina Hayden, one of my good friends, she says it kind of looks like oils the way you paint. Like you figured out how to like make acrylic almost look like oil.
Are you using tar gel?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she said, like, and I tell people, because they'll look at my work and they'll be like, it looks done. Like, the boat looks done. The sea, everything looks done. I'm like, it's not done. It's not done until I feel like it's done. It's weird. It's this maddening process.
No, I know that. And there was a friend of mine from, actually, I've never met him, but he's been following me. He's from Detroit. And he just put something up today that said, I don't like it when people tell me, oh, stop, you're done.
Yeah.
And when my BFA class of 1975, we still get together quarterly.
Yeah.
And we will do that and say, you've got to stop, it's done. But it's a great opinion, but it's not a mandate.
Yes.
You have to, I'd be doing work and my wife would say, is it done? Because sometimes it's sort of like a sauce or something that has to marinate.
Yes, that's the perfect word.
So you put it out of sight for a couple of days, and then I think one of my painting instructors said the best shot you'll ever have of your work is from the corner of your eye.
Yeah. No,
and if your head doesn't snap, go back to work.
Go back to work. No, it's true. It's because, it sometimes feels like this maddening process, but it's also very exhilarating. And the colors I use, there's always this play of light and darkness, and I know why. I remember I had a student in one of my painting classes that even said something to me that was like, use a lot of darkness in your work, but there's also a lot of light. And she was just like, that's interesting to me.
the battle
there's
of light,
and that's
light and dark.
Yeah, that's basically, so it's this incredibly crazy process. But like the New Bedford Lights Fine Art Club, that was like I did not anticipate that.
Yeah, that was like a trampoline.
I could not sleep after that, truly.
Yeah.
And then at my exhibition at the Co-Creative Center in May, my opening reception, all these people came in and were like, oh yeah, I'm such a fan of your work.
Yeah, we've heard of you. Like, how's that possible?
Yeah, and I just kind of was like, wow. And one of the people that bought my paintings at the Fine Arts Club, she came to my opening and she went in and bought one right away. It was like, I want that one. Who I talked to, and it's like, you talked to Dina.
No, that's great.
Yeah, and it was great.
Now, let me ask you a question. Michelangelo always used to say, he would downplay his talent. And I don't even like that word, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
And he would say, no, what I'm doing is I'm releasing the figure that I see that lives or sleeps in the stone. Yeah. I'm taking everything away that's not them.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, so, in painting or any art, it's either an additive process or a subtractive process. So when you're starting with a white canvas, it's a subtractive process because you're destroying the whiteness.
Yes.
So which way do you go?
I'm definitely, it's weird.
Because, it's like some of the art things like positive is negative, negative is positive. You're like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely subtracting the whiteness. And I usually start with a lot of dark color. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably indicative of usually what I'm working through emotionally or something going on in my life, or, any sort of trauma I'm trying to kind of not process healthfully that creeps in. And so I start with a lot of darkness, and then I add lightness to it. That's when I start to bring the lighter colors, and it's just this that's when I bring all those So I go back and forth between I'm subtracting and adding, subtracting and adding. Like, I know my process looks insane.
So it's a building process.
It's a building process. It really is. And I
Yeah.
go through these periods of subtracting and adding. And I have literally, like, sometimes thought, like, I had it completed with the bow. Everything was completed. And then all of a sudden, I'm adding more to it.
Do you your self-criticism, is it like, oh, that's trite, or that's decorative, or that, what kind of...
That's a great question. Yeah, no, my criticism, it's definitely stems from imposter syndrome. I remember I was explaining this to someone at the Fine Arts Club, because he was like, you seem nervous or surprised that everyone here, like, was so into your work. And I was like, I have horrible imposter syndrome. Like, I can't explain it. I grew up I'm a first generation college student. I grew up in a working class family. I'm not sure if that's part of it. I'm not sure if because I've just never felt like I'm a real artist at times, and I'm faking it till I make it. And then I have, these amazing people at the Co-Creative and here in the community. They're like, oh, I love your work as an artist, and calling me an artist. And,
so being successful in spite of yourself, which is kind of a weird feeling.
A weird feeling. Like I
so
didn't.
you haven't surrendered yet, and then that's act of surrender can become dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
Because once you've surrendered, you really don't have a lot of control. I've always admired certain people, celebrities. One of them was Julia Child, and I had a chance to meet with her, got her autograph.
That's amazing.
And I expected her to just scribble something on, her autograph,
Yeah.
and that was it. She saw I was from New Bedford, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Fortier, do sit down." And we sat and talked for 20 bloody minutes.
That's amazing.
And until somebody grabbed her away, because,
Yeah.
oh, you have to do another lecture, Miss Childs, right? And she's like, I just am who I am. What
Yeah.
other people say, it doesn't really matter. I
Yeah.
guess as a painter, and I'm getting up there, and I'm discovering that, yeah, there is that imposter syndrome, or but there's. When I was a kid, working class family, my parents were separated. We lived in these cold water, as they refer to them in England, flats, but they were tenements, as they
Yeah.
call them. And there were no wall switches to turn on the lights.
Yeah.
There was a light in the middle of the ceiling with a pull string.
Yeah.
So you would enter into a dark room, and you would be with your hands like a blind
Yeah.
person, feeling around for the string.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, would be how I would describe my practice and career as an artist.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that groping for that light switch.
Yes, yeah. No, I can completely relate to that. It's just, sometimes too, I almost imagine myself like falling down a hole, and I've been like climbing out of it, and I'm finally like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just, I almost can't believe I'm almost out. It's really weird. It's very weird.
Yeah, our time has passed by really fast. We're almost ready to wrap this up, but is there anything that you want people to know about you, your art, your fears, your joys, whatever? I mean, because this, even though this is just a casual conversation,
Yeah.
people say, oh, what are you going to ask me? I have no idea until you show up. This is just a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the conversations are much more valuable in a historical sense, because they're probably going to be touching on so many things.
Yeah.
Or we've touched on so many things.
Yes.
That a straightforward interview would, it's like 6 points. And
Right.
That's pretty much, and belabor them to death.
Right.
So anything like that?
Yeah, I think just really my work more than anything has been inspired by my son and I finally finding home and community. I can't thank the people at the Co-Creative enough, and my good friend Dina and a lot of my other friends there. I can't thank the people here in New Bedford, Dartmouth, Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, Marion, who have for some reason come to like my work or embrace my son and I here. I've been looking for this my whole life, which again, this is part of why my work is so inspired locally, and there's a lot of emotion. I grew up in a house of domestic abuse. I came out of a very emotionally draining and abusive marriage, and trying to find home and security and a place to feel like you belong is amazing, and that's what I found here. But then to find a place too where you're actually doing well as an artist and getting celebrated and getting asked to do amazing things like this, or having opening receptions at the Co-Creative and people coming to my paint nights, and it's just kind of amazing. So I just want to say thank you to everyone here in the South Coast of Massachusetts for giving me a home.
Yeah, and I think too, an older, wiser person once said, if good things are happening to you, just say thank you and move on.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't try to, don't get too full of yourself.
Oh yeah, no.
Don't try to, and I'm a Virgo, so analyze everything.
I do too. My birthday is August 29th, and I turned 35.
I'm on the 2nd of September.
Okay, all right, so it's coming.
A few days away,
and
right?
I get very reflective in August, I think about it. And no, truly, I think being humble is the biggest thing. I think that's in some ways, I get annoyed with my own imposter syndrome, but it also keeps me humbled, because I think I'm always worried about the other shoe falling off, so to speak. So I get excited by what all these great things that happen, but I just want to have a happy, peaceful life. My dreams are very simple. My son and I live in this nice apartment in Mattapoisett, but I have a very simple dream of being able to buy a small little house in Mattapoisett eventually. Getting him a border collie that I think he wants to name Kylo Ren. Painting, teaching, being involved in education and the arts here. Maybe one day I'll meet a nice man, and maybe he'll have a sibling, but again, my dreams are very, very simple and modest, and really I just like having a community and home and getting to connect with people in education and the arts. So
yeah, I think a lot of that too has to do with that act of surrender. I brought it up several times on the show, because it's basically you're having the conversation with people, but there's only so much of your life, so you repeat it, because we've done this almost 200 times.
Right.
And I'll never forget from the opening credits of Forrest Gump, when that damn feather came out.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm so hooked into this movie. I don't even know what it's all about.
Yeah, but it's that feather, right?
It's that damn feather.
Yeah.
And that movie is got to be one of the. It took him 20 years, I think, to write. What's his name? Not Forrest. The author. But anyway, it took him 20 years to write that novel, and there's just so many layers and levels of that thing.
Yeah.
That I still carry with me. Here's supposedly this man who has a low IQ, but happens to have been involved in or on the periphery, very close periphery of every historical event in the country.
Yeah.
And he was a kind and good man.
Yeah. No, that's, one of the reasons Ulysses by James Joyce is one of my favorite. People ask me oh God, why do you like that book so much?
Oh, it's horrible. It's so dark.
But it's honestly this beautiful book about a random day. And I remember my thesis chair, Des, who is the Irish-British professor, he would always say there's so much to the banal, to the mundane of life. And that's kind of what Ulysses is about, is this guy just goes off for the day. He's having a rough time with his wife, they're not on good terms, and he just goes and has a random day out and about, and it's really just, it's about kind of all he wants to do is go home at the end of the day. That's where he wants to end up. And it's this beautiful book, because it's really just about, this random day where all these things happen, and that's just kind of life. I think about that a lot. There's just beauty in simplicity and enjoying my days. And I the fact that these great things with art happen or in education are great, but really I just want to feel at peace and go home and spend time with friends and just enjoy life a little bit.
And one question, have you ever read Tracy Chevalier's Girl with a Pearl Earring?
I have not, actually, but
first chapter, if that doesn't hook you, Grit, I think is her name. When you look at her station in life, and she's doing the most mundane of things. Yeah. And it's, I'm wondering how many painters sat on the edge of their chair going, wait a minute. And then the character of Vermeer walks in. Yeah. And he notices what she's doing. Yeah. And so it's all good.
It's all, yes, exactly. Good. Well, yeah, that's kind of how James Joyce's the short story The Dead ends, is this guy kind of realizes he goes on this soliloquy about how we all end up dead. We all go to the great beyond whatever's out there.
Right,
and really all I can do is just try to enjoy my days. And
Exactly.
I think there's something
and
to
it's
that.
one day at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, folks, if you've joined us somewhere in the middle or towards the end, we've been speaking with Elyse Laurelle. We'll just leave it at that. You can see her full name on the companion blog post to this podcast. And it's been an enjoyable conversation.
This is great.
This is Ron Fortier, the co-founder of the Artist Index. And this has been the South Coast Artist Index podcast. So I've been thinking about, how ending all these podcasts, and I think it really is a good thing to say. Be nice to other people and be kind to yourself. See you next time. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.